So could you start off by sharing a little bit about you, Maria, who you are, and if you had any type of health journey, what that entailed?
Sure. So my name is Maria Claps, and I am a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. And I am a mom of four. They're grown now. And around age 42, I started to have what were the symptoms of perimenopause. And I visited a pretty well-known, well-published medical doctor in New York City. And he kind of got me started on a path, but like was very supplement heavy, kind of drug heavy too. And, got me like started in a good direction, but there were flaws in his treatment program. And I knew it because I had always been holistically oriented and was curious and self-aware. So that was actually, Vivian, when I went back to school, I went to Institute for Integrative Nutrition, quickly realized that was not quite enough for me. And then I studied with Dr. Sara Gottfried, and that's when I did the Functional Diagnostic Nutrition program. And now I get mentored by the best in the business. So that's a little bit about me.
Amazing. Yeah, definitely a great list of practitioners there, and you're included. So I love that. And that's why I wanted you on the podcast. We haven't yet spoken in much detail about perimenopause and menopause, so I knew you'd be the perfect person to have on. So just to start off, what exactly is perimenopause and what's happening physiologically in the female body?
So let's harken back to geometry. Peri means around, so around the time of menopause. And it's just a shift in hormone levels. They start to kind of fluctuate a little bit. So what happens is our hormones are they're directed by the brain and through feedback loops. So the brain like senses levels of hormones in the body, and if there's not, the brain tells, in this case, the ovaries to make estrogen, and that just starts to get a little bit disrupted for whatever reason. Like aging is really the major part of it, and that's perimenopause. So women tend to have a lot of symptoms. But one of the things I also notice about perimenopause is, it's hard to isolate symptoms. Like we don't exist in a vacuum. We're not in a closed metabolic ward in the hospitals where we can figure out all these things easily. So women think, well, it's just life, or it's kids, or I'm getting older. I mean, those things might play a small part, but also hormones and neurotransmitters and the way the brain communicates with the rest of the body is changing. So that is perimenopause.
And what age does this typically happen, and how long does it occur for?
Yeah, so it varies very much. I would say it can run for 2 to 10 years. I would say 10 is quite long. I do hear women in their 30s telling me that they're in perimenopause. They're very self-aware if they are, because like not a lot of women say I'm in perimenopause to begin with. And B, while I do think that is a little bit on the young side, two things come to mind. Milestones of reproduction and reproductive life are changing. And I never discount anyone's story. So it is possible, although I will say, and this is not just because this was my own experience. My own experience was age 42, 43, going through perimenopause. But having now worked with hundreds of women, and basically women 40 and up, and also having this confirmed by a very well-known, scientist that I work with, 42, 43 is usually like a massive shift in hormones. Anyone that knows, like that has had children or raises children, knows that, 14 was, wow, a change, or, that we have these milestones that we know for all children. Well, I happen to think that, again, somewhere between the journey from 42 to 43 is when, wow, there's a real change going on. Again, it differs for each woman, but.
And is there any like definitive tests that they can do, any blood work, or would it just be like, you're this age, you have these symptoms, we can assume that you're in perimenopause?
It's really based on symptomology because, so there's no definitive like threshold test you're in perimenopause because, follicle stimulating hormone is not a valuable test right now to determine, menopausal age and perimenopause. It's helpful for other things, but it's not good. It shifts, changes. It's really just based on symptoms. And it's really like, if we were to say, see, if you were the type of person, like starting at 35, you tested like once a year or twice a year, your estrogen, your progesterone, then maybe you could use blood testing. But really, no, there's no need via testing really to know, again, in the late 30s, early 40s, am I in perimenopause? It's really based on symptoms.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that someone could do to delay perimenopause or menopause? Say if they have a family history of the mother going into perimenopause at age 35, or they've had to have an acute hysterectomy because of medical reasons, and that's been a strong family history. Is there anything that someone can do to prevent that from happening or delay the whole process?
Yeah, it's a fabulous question. So for my clients that are, again, in their early to mid 40s, and the period is getting a little bit shifting around, and they're kind of like starting to feel some changes, and they're getting curious about menopause, one of the first things that I ask them is, at what age did your mom go into menopause? And interestingly enough, this is a little bit of a sideline, they very often don't know, because I feel like our mother's generation almost all had hysterectomies. So they
True.
just don't know.
Yeah.
But having said that, yeah, there is a bit of a genetic component to that. Can you slow it down? It's possible that you can, but I'm not really sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And we sometimes hear of premature ovarian failure. Mm-hmm. How is that different than just going into menopause?
Yeah, so basically that is a menopausal state. That's when that's when a woman is menopausal prior to the age of 40. It comes with some pretty severe consequences, because when we lose that estrogen, we lose cardio protection, we lose bone protection, and I don't have the final word on this. It's thought that it's perhaps an autoimmune process happening in the ovaries as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
And how soon should we start planning for perimenopause and menopause? Is it just when you get symptoms, like it's time to take some supplements, take some herbs, or for those who are maybe in their 20s listening right now, is it something that they should start thinking of at that age?
Well, I mean, I feel like the 20s might be a little young. I think maybe once you hit 35, you want to start considering it. Once you hit 40, you definitely want to start considering it. I think really the focus on, maybe we'll say, the 20s and the early 30s is, Vivian, I'm sure you agree with this. It's like a heart-friendly diet, an ovary-friendly diet, a brain-friendly diet. It's pretty much right?
Mm-hmm.
The same.
Yeah.
So the healthier, you are, and the more attention that you give your health, and, is just great at any point in life. What you want to start considering once you hit about your 40s is going to be, okay, am I nutrient deficient? Am I mineral deficient? Because, the more revolutions you have, right?
Yeah.
The more time you have on this planet, on this earth,
Mm-hmm.
you have the potential to develop more problems, and you have the potential to be deficient in nutrients. So,
are there any specific nutrients that you commonly see be deficient, and how should our diet shift as we get older? Like, are there any changes to like carbohydrate tolerance, for example? I know that you speak about that.
Mm-hmm.
How does that happen?
Sure. So I'm actually seeing a lot of B12 deficiency in my clients. And again, I do think that is part and parcel, has to do with another kind of problem that accompanies aging, or challenge, I should say. I like challenge, not problem, because challenge implies we can find a solution.
Yeah, love that.
Is declining levels of stomach acid. So I am seeing a lot of B12 deficiency. I'm seeing occasional, like maybe not overt on blood tests, but occasional B6 deficiency as well, or just like not, maybe not an all-out deficiency, but just getting like, we need to just bump that up. Magnesium deficiency, and then just like a protein deficiency. So what happens is, I'm not an anti-carber by any means. I rather like carbohydrates, but what I've come to realize, and what the science is pretty clear, is that you lose glucose and insulin sensitivity when estrogen is gone. And I will say this, once you have shifted from perimenopause to menopause. And it's really simple. There's a lot of confusion over this. Like, I have women who are, I say, well, are you menopausal? Like, to me, it's a super easy question. Well, I don't really know. I'm like, well, when was your last period? Well, I had one 3 months ago. I'm like, okay, you're not menopausal. It's like you have to be fully without a period for 12 months. And that's menopause. We don't need to go on FSH. We don't need like unnecessary blood tests. Right. And so once that happens, when you have shifted from perimenopause to fully menopausal and you don't have estrogen, and at that point, yes, you still have some estrone. Yes, you still make some estrogen through the adrenals, right? But your ovaries are really not making your main estrogen anymore. You just cannot eat the way you did when you were, say, in your 30s. And that's a large reason why there's so much weight gain.
And that's even true just with menstruating women, like certain points of the cycle, you're more insulin resistant. So you can cycle it in your menstrual years as well. But obviously there's a bigger hit in menopause where you lose a lot of that good, healthy estrogen that makes you more insulin sensitive. So yeah, love that point. I don't think that's commonly spoken about. People are just told, yeah, just eat what you want. Some people just think less food overall is beneficial. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's so funny. I was having a discussion with a colleague. I am not a calorie counter by any means. I don't even track macros. Like I eat my protein to satiation. I fuel, moderately with fats. I'm also not one of these people that's like, oh, I just shove in the avocados and the macadamias
butter on everything.
Yeah, I think that we have to be careful with that. And then I really curate my carbohydrate very carefully. Yeah.
And what about intermittent fasting? Do you feel like that could be beneficial?
I think like everyone needs to do 12 hours. Like 12 hours is sort of like old fashioned and basic. And it's what we had before, the midnight buffet on the cruise. And I mean, I live right outside New York City, Vivian. Every stores you wouldn't even suspect. There's a skincare store called Kiehl's, and there's Bed Bath & Beyond. They all have cafes in them. You can go in to buy a jar of skin cream.
Yeah.
And you can be sitting in the back of the store with a big chocolate chip cookie and a cup of coffee or tea.
Crazy.
So we have, we always have opportunity to eat. There's a store in Manhattan called Insomnia Cookies. We're open till 3 or 4 in the morning.
Oh my God.
So I think 12 to 13 hours is great, and I think it's what we need to go back to. I'm gonna just give you a little cute little. I'll never forget this. I was on a cruise many years ago, and the comedian actually said, I'm about to end, and I want to tell you another joke. He goes, but you people have been away from food for a whole hour. And it
so
just
true.
makes me think, it's so true. So yes, let's put like a good 12 to 13 hours between our meal. And then, if you want to shift it out to maybe 14 to 16, I don't know if I really like any more than that. Yeah. And then also having said that, if you need to eat, I think there's such a focus on intermittent fasting that, if you need to eat because you feel true stomach hunger, or you're just low in energy, then eat. Like, don't get caught up with, I have to do it this way.
I've got another 2 hours to go. I'm just going to pass out with hunger because it's not time to eat. Yeah. And the 12 hours, like that seems pretty easy. And that's got some protective benefits against breast cancer as well. So it seems pretty well tolerated by a lot of people, and it has a lot of good benefits. So I agree with that one. Too much can be a little bit too stressful on the adrenals. Absolutely.
It can be, absolutely.
Yeah. And the transition into menopause, should it be completely symptom-free? Like if we're experiencing symptoms then something's wrong? Or should we always expect some symptoms and changes to mood and energy?
Yeah, that's a great question. It would be ideal if it was symptom-free. For like the vast majority of women, it's not. And I think a lot of that has to do with just 21st century living and, we just toxicity. Yeah. And just stressful, always on the go, like demanding too much of ourselves. So I think it's rare that women transition into menopause without any issues. Yeah.
And what about someone who's artificially induced into menopause with a hysterectomy? I know there's some obvious medical reasons and concerns with that, but there are practitioners and doctors who are just like whipping the uterus out of a lot of women, and gallbladders as well. What are the risks of that, and how does that affect a woman? Like when the body's not ready to transition into menopause and you just do that artificially, how does that impact the woman?
Yeah, so if they have their ovaries removed along with the uterus, that's instant menopause, and it's usually instant problems,
Yeah.
unless a woman has been put on hormone replacement therapy, which is not the standard of care.
Yeah.
That women automatically get that. I've spoken to women in their, say, mid-40s who said, I had a hysterectomy when I was 37. I'm like, okay, so have you been on hormones, which is really protective, right? Protective heart, brain, bones. So yeah, if she doesn't get that, and she has her ovaries out, then it's instant menopause. Literally, like the moment those organs come out, those ovaries come out, that woman is menopausal. Now, if a woman has a hysterectomy and she still has her ovaries in, she's not, well, this is really just me being more of a wordsmith. Technically, she's menopausal because she's not having a period for 12 months, but her ovaries are still, producing. Now, we can't really track them because we're not going to be menstruating, but it's also thought that because the uterus was removed, that there is going to be some disruption in the communication between the brain and the ovaries. So hormone production will not stop, but it may wane. It may lag behind a little bit.
Yeah. What are some of the common reasons that women have hysterectomies?
Oh, yeah. So endometriosis, fibroids, flooding, things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're going to come on to the common symptoms that women can experience in perimenopause, and just give us your explanation as to what's going on and how someone could improve that symptom. So the first one being hot flashes or hot flushes, whatever you like to say. What's going on there, and is there anything a woman can do in the moment to help get through that? Because I know it seems, I've not been through it, but it seems like it's pretty problematic in the moment.
So hot flashes are thought to affect up to about 80% of women going through menopause. They can happen in perimenopause. So two reasons. One is a dip in estrogen. So it's possible that a woman's not menopausal and she has a hot flash when her estrogen dips in the menstrual cycle. All right. A cortisol surge is thought to be perhaps responsible for a hot flash as well. I don't have like a ton of experience with coaching women through that in terms of what we can do, except beyond like the standard advice, which is going to be just like, layers and right. But
deep breathing and
it's possible that and there's a reason why I don't have a lot of experience, and I'll get to that in a minute. It's possible that if you're in the perimenopause years that you can do estrogenic type foods. So like flax and soy are the big ones. So I actually like small amounts of fermented soy. I love tempeh. I'm certainly not making a recommendation to do like soy powders or anything like that.
Great.
Miso, like that.
Yeah.
So that might actually help sit on the estrogen receptor and kind of boost estrogen a little bit. Yeah, but I've not tested that, so in terms of looking at blood and stuff like that.
Yeah, so it would be more, I guess with all of these, going to be more preventative rather than wait until you experience a symptom and trying to find something to do.
Well, so in perimenopause, yes, I would say, try that soy and just try like the standard issue recommendations. But when women come to me and they are straight up in menopause and they're having hot flashes, there's nothing that works like estrogen. Absolutely nothing. You give that a week or two and those hot flashes are gone if you're dosed correctly.
Would
Yeah.
that be as effective with the phytoestrogens in diet, or are you talking bioidenticals?
Oh, so bioidenticals,
Yeah.
like it's a prescription.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely want to talk more about the difference between synthetic and bioidentical, all of
Yeah.
that. Next symptom would be weight gain or weight distribution changes. So people start to notice a spare tire around the midsection. What's going on there?
Yeah. So I am a believer that like in that perimenopause to menopause shift that you're going to put some weight on. Some weight is just sort of a normal, natural kind of evolutionary process. So our ovaries are really stopping their production of estradiol, but fat cells do make some estrogen. So this is just a theory. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
it's backed up by science. It's truly just a theory, and that is that um, our we pad a little bit with a little bit of fat because that fat is going to be create a little bit of estrogen for us.
Yeah.
Now, the goal is really not to use that as an excuse. And like once you go over between like 5 to maybe 10 pounds max from, let's just say, your ideal weight at say 35,
Mm-hmm.
then you're packing on too much fat, and you can't kind of claim that evolutionary protective
The
process.
more the better.
That's most likely insulin and those
Yeah.
type of issues.
Yeah. Okay.
And could be inactivity and yeah.
True.
Well,
And what are the negative health effects in menopause for those who are overweight? Is it just they're going to have too much estrogen, or is there any what about breast cancer risk? I know that weight management
sure.
is a factor with that.
Yeah, sure. One of the best things that women need to do to keep themselves safe, from breast cancer is not being overweight.
Mm-hmm.
So that's huge. And then, metabolic syndrome
Yeah.
is also something that women are at risk for, and weight, figures in there. And then honestly, Vivian, just really self-esteem, because women at this stage of life are, another thing that's kind of affected when hormones change is mood, and, even if, let's just say we have a woman who's really not gaining too much weight, her mood might be off because hormones fire with neurotransmitters, but then, she's putting on weight, she's feeling maybe not
Mm-hmm.
so good about herself. So
Yeah.
a lot of reasons to keep our weight in a healthy range.
And are there any other specific recommendations for mood issues and anxiety? Like if your client was struggling with those symptoms, are there any specifics that you recommend? Any stress management techniques that you
Um,
like?
Move to a sunny locale.
Yeah,
That's what I need to do.
same here.
Sun is so important. It kind of signals our brain to
Mm,
make, some of the hormones that we need. Um, all right. Um, Replace the waning hormones is huge.
mm, hmm.
Absolutely huge.
Okay.
Yeah. Because
And
because when estrogen drops, it can pull down serotonin with it.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
true. And menstrual irregularities, like you think as you get older, hormones are declining, you'd have less period problems, but how can things like fibroids and flooding and cramps, why do they sometimes get worse?
Yeah. Okay. So it could be due to the fact that estrogen is just it's dropping, but at the same time it can be all over the map and
Mm,
shifting as
okay.
well. So
And the estrogen metabolites could also be a
yeah.
problem.
So estrogen is an umbrella term, and people think it's one thing. Estrogen is actually really quite complex. We may have actually up to 60 different estrogenic molecules in the body. Some are good. No, some are great. So
Mm,
there's good, better, and best. And if we have the not so nice ones, yeah, they could certainly be causing symptoms.
hmm.
And then we have like liver health as well, can be causing those
Yes.
symptoms.
Yeah. And talk about adrenal, the connection between perimenopause, your experience in perimenopause, and your adrenal health, because they're like the backup generators, aren't they, when the ovaries retire? So talk about how we can care for our adrenals, what they are, and why they're so important.
Yeah, so adrenals, they kind of manage stress. I do like to talk about the adrenals because I think there's a lot of misinformation. I think people feel like, oh, I have high cortisol. That's bad. I'm like,
Hmm.
no, 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 no. That's
Mm-hmm.
not bad. That's actually your body responding the way it should.
Yeah.
And you don't like using supplements to bring it down is like, to me, it's like last on the list. Let's figure out like what's going on and why is that happening. It's primarily lifestyle. Interestingly, I find that like low adrenal function is much more of a challenge than high adrenal function. And so the adrenals, they just like, they help us manage life and stress. They are, they produce the main hormone is cortisol. There are several. And, we call upon cortisol when we need to raise blood sugar, when we need to raise blood pressure, when we need to manage inflammation. So it does a lot for us throughout our life. And I don't necessarily believe in adrenal fatigue, but I do think the adrenals can get a little bit dysregulated, like called upon a lot. And it's just, honestly, Vivian, I think it's really just primarily a lifestyle fix. Okay, so assuming that we don't have either end of the spectrum, which is autoimmune disease, right? Either too hyper or too hypo, too little. I just think it's really, we need to just dial back in lifestyle. And a lot of that is going to be sitting when you have meals, having gratitude, not taking yourself too seriously, eating protein, not causing blood sugar spikes, getting sun in the morning, super important for adrenals, winding down at night. So the stuff that costs zero money, but it's gonna be the hardest to do.
Yeah, it's the most difficult though. People just want to pop a pill and bring down their cortisol levels, and I've seen that as well. The body sometimes is trying to reduce inflammation and protect you against a viral infection or a bacteria, and if you're suppressing that cortisol, that's why sometimes people can be in worse pain. The symptoms can get worse. And that's even when they've tested. Some people don't even bother testing, and they just start taking glandulars and licorice and all of this stuff, and they have no idea what they're doing. So definitely test, but don't underestimate the lifestyle stuff, because yes, it's more difficult, but it's the most effective. I agree.
The most effective.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a few more things on diet and lifestyle, then we'll talk about the bioidenticals. Are there any specific foods that you would recommend people to increase? I know that everyone's different. You've mentioned the phytoestrogens. Are there any other foods that would benefit someone in this life stage?
Okay. I would say, all right, so specific foods, pomegranate seeds are nice. They help us to create good estrogen. They're also so pretty, messy, but pretty. Cruciferous vegetables, that is going to be your broccoli, your cauliflower, your arugula, your mustard greens, your Brussels sprouts. My mom, I kind of grew up in a semi-health conscious home, and my mom and my grandma were always like, eat your vegetables, they're anti-cancer. And the reason why they're anti-cancer, because they help to create a specific estrogen metabolite that's anti-cancer.
Yeah, great. And that's great that they knew that back then. Usually it's just like, oh, it'll help you go to the bathroom, but yeah, they must have been on it to know about the cancer link.
They were sort of.
Yeah. And herbal remedies, I don't know what it's like in the US, but people tend to just go to health food stores and ask the attendant what they should take for hot flashes and menopause, and they get given things like black cohosh and dong quai and sage. Are there any that you use successfully, or do you find them?
That's a great question. So I am not really all right, so here, how can I explain this? I love herbs. I love herbal medicine. I like herbs actually more for adrenal issues as a support, not as a first line of therapy. I'm not really a big fan of herbs in menopause. And I have companies contact me all the time asking me to kind of promote their product. And there's a reason why I won't do it. And that is because not that they're bad by any means. They're less researched, but that's okay. We don't need, gold standard studies to take something, right? And that is, Vivian, because the replacing hormones once you are menopausal is so much more impactful than any herb that you can take. So that's why I just don't focus on that area.
Yeah. And some people's perspectives, I'm totally with you with the bioidenticals. They're not as commonly used here in the UK, I don't think, as in the US. But some people say we're naturally meant to have lower hormones in menopause? Like, why should we be taking them? If your holistic approach, shouldn't we just be letting the body do what it naturally should?
That's a great question. I need to do like a whole series on that. I do hear that quite frequently. Okay. So yes, it's true. This is what happens, but this is what happens, and it is natural, but it's certainly not optimal. So humans, zoo animals, and domesticated animals are the only animals or creatures. I don't like to call people animals. I just did that. We are the only beings that actually will experience menopause. So in the wild, there's no menopause, okay? Because after your reproductive capacity is over, how can I say this? This is really just kind of speaking from a kind of a natural evolutionary perspective. You have no viability, all right? Now, that's not the case here, but the truth is that whether you plan on having children or not, this has nothing to do with feminism or choice or anything like that, but you are designed to reproduce.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. And so once menopause hits, you're not reproductive anymore. You're seeing a waning of your health. Okay, that's one thing. The second thing is, life expectancy about 100 years ago was about 50, give or take a few years. That's also the average age of North American women. I think it's the same in the UK.
Yeah.
51 of menopause. Okay. So we didn't have to deal with, of living 20 to maybe 50 years after menopause. And then thirdly to that, I would say, we have no problem giving diabetics insulin. We have no problem taking Nature-Throid or other hormones. We have no problem wearing glasses to correct sight, hearing aids if we need to. So would you rather wear adult diapers because you've got bladder leakage because of the estrogen waning? Would you rather spend your time going from, your 60s and 70s going from one dreary doctor's office visit to the next? Do you want to be put on statins and, beta blockers, or do you want to restore hormones? And then you likely, I'm not saying that that's going to be, 100%, but likely all of those things are going to be greatly lessened.
Yeah.
So it's natural, but it's not optimal, I guess is the summary wrap up on that.
Yeah, and we're trying to be like so holistic all the time, but you're right, we drive cars, we do all of this stuff, we take all of these superfoods, but we're scared of bioidentical hormones. And there is a lot of fear mongering online, and with the term HRT, hormone replacement therapy, a lot of controversy there. What's the difference between the synthetic hormones and the bioidentical hormones that you promote?
Yeah, that's a great question. So bioidentical hormones, interestingly enough, they come from plants, but I don't want anyone to think that yam cream it's not the same thing. Yeah. So they are synthesized in a lab to be chemically, biologically identical to what the ovary produces, which I just find that fascinating. Like hormones that come from our bodies actually come from plants. I mean, that's just so fascinating, that connection. And so now what synthetic hormones are similar, but that's a whole different ballgame. They're similar, but then they could just have one little change, and that change is so they can be patentable. And the most common synthetic estrogen is called Premature, and it does actually come from horse's urine. That's not like an urban legend. It's really true. And that is great for horses, but not so great for humans. And also for those that love animals to think that, horses are kept in stalls, and I don't like that. Yeah.
And is the dosage that you're trying to match the same as a 30-year-old woman, or is it just enough to relieve symptoms?
Okay, so to be perfectly honest with you, we would have to do a 1 to 3 hour podcast on that. There's controversy with that. There's several ways of dosing hormones. Yeah. So
Okay.
it varies on worldview and medical professional that's going to help you. Yeah. But
Interesting.
we'll leave it at that. Replacing hormones is for the vast majority of women, not all women, but for the vast majority of women, is really safe and beneficial.
Yeah. And what's the difference with the wild yam cream? Why is that not
It's just
beneficial?
it's just not it's not chemically identical to what we produce. It might be similar, but it's just not identical.
Hmm. And are there any cases where women can just take progesterone, or do you always need to combine estrogen and progesterone together?
Okay, so now let's put that in the context of menopause.
Hmm.
So again, I always said I never want to discount anyone's story, and some women will report that progesterone works initially and just progesterone, but it's going to stop working, and that's because you need an estrogen receptor to create receptors for progesterone.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. And the thoughts that it increases cancer, are we just talking about the synthetic here? And is that actually accurate, or is it just all been blown out of proportion?
Um, okay, so that's a great question. So when there was the 2002 Women's Health Initiative, which was ended, the study drug that was used was called Premarin.
Hmm.
Okay, so that's a horse estrogen.
Yeah.
And then there was another arm of so Premarin was given to women without a uterus, so they had just their estrogen. And then women with the uterus were given Premarin and a synthetic progesterone. I think it was medroxyprogesterone. Okay, so MPA. And what they found was that women who used Premarin only, and again, that could only be the women without a uterus, and again, that's not really the best estrogen for us, actually had less of a cancer risk than women who used nothing.
Right.
So can we extrapolate that out to, well, bioidentical estrogen and bioidentical progesterone are the bee's knees and just
Hmm.
perfect? I don't know if the studies are there. They might be. I just haven't seen that yet. So that's
Yeah.
one of the things I'm looking into for 2020. But
Okay.
I suspect strongly and think that they probably are safer.
Hmm.
We know that transdermal, that's what we rub on the skin. Estrogen is really helps in most cases to lower inflammation, and that Premarin or really any oral estrogen can increase inflammation. And inflammation is at the root of a lot of chronic disease and problems. So it's a
Hmm.
good question though.
Yeah. And do they still use like vaginal suppositories or pellets
So
or anything
vaginal
like that?
estrogen is a very safe way to go. It's really considered perhaps even safer than transdermal, which would be just like rubbing on the arms and the legs.
Hmm.
You may not reach like systemic levels in the blood with vaginal estrogen. It tends to stay a little bit more local. So even women with a past history of breast cancer typically can use vaginal estrogen. Of course, this is something they have to discuss with their
Yeah.
doctor. But yeah.
Would you rather someone take nothing at all or synthetic HRT?
Oh, it's a great question. You ask really good questions.
I'm thinking of my future choices right now.
Okay. So I would say that yes, I've said this frequently. This is just my opinion again. So this is opinion. I think synthetic estrogen, which I'm not a fan of, is probably better than zero estrogen.
Mm,
But there are a lot of estrogens. I believe in both the U.S. and the U.K. Well, I know for sure in the U.S. you can get an FDA-approved bioidentical estrogen, and in many cases that's just the patch, which is a
yeah,
fabulous.
yeah. And are
Yeah.
there any resources online in the US or worldwide that you can find doctors who prescribe bioidentical?
Yes. So for in the U.S., you would honestly the best way to do that would be just to call a compounding pharmacy. Do you have
Yeah,
compounding pharmacies in
I
the
think
UK?
so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you
Hmm.
do. So or you in the US you could look at like the Institute for Functional Medicine, or there's like a association of compounding pharmacies, or that you would just go directly,
Yeah.
you would find a compounding pharmacy in your area. um A4M, Institute for Functional Medicine, like that. Yeah.
Hmm. And are there any negative side effects of bioidentical hormones?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll be sure to cover them.
There's two that we'll discuss very briefly, and that is that progesterone, even oral progesterone, or oral progesterone is safe, oral estrogen is not, or even progesterone that you put on your skin, transdermal, can actually cause a little bit of digestive upset. So it can cause I guess it's the lower esophageal sphincter to get lazy, and you can get a little bit of like progesterone-induced GERD. So that's one thing. That to me, you have to kind of mitigate and manage that, and it can be, but that's not a reason not to use it, just because there's a potential side effect. And then the second thing is, as beneficial as estrogen is for so many body systems, so many, cognition, brain, heart, bladder, vaginal health, and I just will kind of add this in. So whereas it's thought that hot flashes may kind of go away on their own, maybe 5 to 10 years after menopause, what doesn't go away and gets worse and worse and worse is vaginal health, vaginal dryness, genitourinary symptom of menopause. That will not settle on its own.
Yeah.
And estrogen can completely mitigate those issues.
Do you ever see women experiencing more androgenic symptoms from bioidentical hormones, like acne or increased body odor or aggressiveness in any way?
So, I mean, it's possible. It's possible from testosterone to get too much. Yeah.
If they're not taking progesterone, just estrogen and progesterone.
Yeah. I mean, so I have not seen that. I do think it's possible. Yeah. It's really more possible with the synthetic progestins. Yeah,
they do act. It's same with the birth control pill, isn't it? They can act more androgenic in nature. Okay, interesting. So to finish up, I wanted to ask a few more questions about you, how you stay hormonally healthy, because you look absolutely amazing. You look better than me right now, which is sad.
I look tired.
So what's one thing that you do every day to stay in hormonal harmony?
I walk. I absolutely love to walk, and I get out in nature. And it's winter here now. I think it is for you too, and it's really a challenge for me. But I've just decided to get out, even if it's cloudy. So that's absolutely love to do that. Yeah.
And how's that benefiting? Is it just benefiting you overall, your health, your stress, that's helping your hormones?
So it really helps my mood. I tend to get a little bit of sad seasonal affective disorder in the winter, although I'm much better this winter than I was last, and there's several reasons for that. But yeah, I mean, so mood, really helps my mood. And then, we're meant to walk, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask a little bit about exercise. Are there any exercises that women should really back off from in menopause or perimenopause and wants to emphasize?
I feel like the big decider is, how do you feel? How do you feel? What's your exercise recovery like? One of the things that's really interesting, if you're a menopausal woman and you're not replacing lost hormones at all, is you're really at risk for like frozen shoulder and knee issues and things. And that's because estrogen really helps with elastin, and elastin cushions joints. So just be careful. Now, whether on hormones or not, what you need to do, if you can, is lift as heavy weights as possible. Careful for form, careful that you don't injure yourself, because one of the worst things is like being perimenopause or menopause, working on a health plan, being motivated, being like, rah, rah, I'm going with the weights, and then, you hurt yourself, and then you're out for like 6 to 8 weeks, getting physical therapy, stuff like that. So
hire a trainer, everyone, if you're not sure what you're doing. It's worth the money. And what's your go-to breakfast?
Okay. Eggs, and usually a piece of sausage, or sometimes I will have salmon in the morning as well. My husband looks at me, he's like, I can't believe you're eating that. I'm like, I feel so good having like a good 30 grams of protein for breakfast.
Yeah, we need to break that myth that it just has to be toast and cereal and bagels for breakfast. It can just be a regular meal.
Yes.
Strange to think. And what's one herb, nutrient, or supplement that you couldn't live without during your perimenopausal journey?
Okay. Oh, that's a great question. So we talked a little bit about herbs. I'm not a big fan of herbs once you hit menopause. Not that I'm anti them. It's like I said, it's
Yeah.
because the hormones take precedence, but in perimenopause, that's a whole different story. I'm glad you asked that question. I love chaste tree.
Yes. Tell us
Yeah.
more.
So to me, that really helped with a lot of my PMS type symptoms.
Yeah. And how does that work?
Oh, I think it works by stimulating luteinizing hormone.
Mm.
I think you might know more than I
Yeah.
do about that.
I
Yeah.
like to think of it as like an ovarian adaptogen. So it
Mm,
kind of balances you out whatever you need. And yeah, it can help a wide range of
yeah.
symptoms, even in premenopause as well. So PMS and particularly mood-based issues. I think it has a good benefit to
Yes.
stabilizing mood. Great, love that one.
Yes, and I will say that as much as I love chastry, I do believe, and again, it's that transition from perimenopause to menopause. I think women lose ovarian response to it with age.
Yeah,
So if you're in
makes sense.
menopause, you're not going to really benefit from it. That's my
Yeah,
experience.
yeah. And is there any are there any resources or books on the subject of either perimenopause or menopause that you think the listeners would find beneficial?
Okay, yeah, sure. Absolutely. So this is very academic, so to speak. It's called Estrogen Matters, and it's written for the lay public, but it's
Mhm.
it's a heady read.
Mhm.
It's a phenomenal book. I also like Dr. Sara Gottfried's The Hormone Cure. I feel like it's a tiny bit outdated and maybe in the whole kind of adrenal something of but that's a small thing.
Mhm.
So I still really like it. I think it's got a lot of great advice, supplements and herbs and lifestyle things. I just love that book. I do like The Female Brain by
Mhm.
Luann Brizendine. She talks about mommy brain and mature brain, and it's a great read. What else? Those are the three that come to mind
Yeah,
right.
really good.
Yeah.
I'll link all of those in the show notes as well for those who are interested. And I've had Dr. Carrie Jones on the podcast and Dr. Felice Gersh as well, and they both mentioned the Estrogen Matters book. I've not had a chance to read it yet, so while all you three amazing practitioners have recommended it, it's on my
I'm in
Amazon
good
list.
company.
Yes, I know, amazing. And where can people find more about you online? So I'm sure they're wanting to head over to your website, find more about you. Where can they find you?
Sure, it's just my website is my name. It's Maria Claps. It's CLAPS 1P. Everyone wants to put in a second P. And then I'm pretty active on Instagram, trying to share as much value and answer as many questions as I can. And I think you'll just have to link it. It's Maria
Yeah.
C Wellness. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love your stuff on Instagram. Some great images and information that you share, and free resources, which is always good. And I believe you're doing a retreat. Is it next year?
Oh, yes. Thank
Yeah,
you for
talk
bringing
more
that
about
up.
that.
Yeah, that's coming up on October 3rd in the country, Tuscan countryside.
Amazing.
And pretty much everything that I work with women, like in say a 6-month program, we're going to condense the most important parts into a week. And we're interestingly enough, we're going to have a tonics and tinctures for
Oh,
perimenopause
lovely.
class and menopause, right?
Yeah. And there's
um,
not far to travel from the UK either, so any UK listeners might be a good
yeah,
option.
sure, absolutely. And yeah, we're just going to have great food and great human connection, which
Yeah,
I think is just missing
absolutely.
so much. But thank you for asking. Yes, October.
Yeah, sounds perfect. I wish I was there. And yeah, thank you for coming on the podcast, Maria. This has been absolutely amazing, and I would love to have you on again to maybe do like a Q&A, because I'm sure that people have lots of questions about this
Yeah,
subject. So maybe
I
I'll
would love.
compile a list of questions and then have you back on in a few months' time if you're open to.
I'd love that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
perfect. So thank you so much again for your time, your resources, and yeah, it was good to connect.
Thank you, Vivian. Appreciate it.